A same-sex couple out of Atlanta has been arrested for molesting their two adoptive sons, using them to record child porn, as well as pimping them out to local members of a pedophile ring. A months-long investigation revealed that William and Zachary Zulak allegedly used social media to prostitute their two elementary-age boys. William and Zachary were indicted August 2022 on charges of incest, aggravated sodomy, aggravated child molestation, felony exploitation of children, and felony prostitution of a minor. One of the men that was busted in this alleged pedophile ring told investigators that he was invited by William and Zachary to their home on multiple occasions to take part in sexually abusing these little boys. He also told investigators that Zachary would send him Snapchat messages telling him that he was going to abuse his boy that night, one of his sons, and that he would be sending him video and photos of what was taking place. At the time that William and Zachary were arrested, the boys were 9 and 11. They have been in the care of these two men for the past 4 years. If these men are convicted, they are facing over 9 life sentences each. For more information on this story, click the link in the comment section below, or just head on over to my channel and check out my latest video about this topic.
This serial killer would wear his victims' clothes and take portraits of himself. Dennis Rader was known as the BTK killer because of his method of binding, torturing, and killing his victims. Afterward, he would don his victims' clothing, tie himself up, and take photos like the ones you see here. For years, Rader went free, and his ability to evade police led to an increased arrogance. He sent the police and media letters taunting them. But BTK's cockiness eventually led to his downfall when in 2005, he submitted a floppy disk to police after they assured him it couldn't be used to trace him.
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew. Part 24. There's been multiple cases of people actually being eaten alive by an escalator. If you like to eat cereal, there's a 21 to 38% chance that you're also eating an Icarus mite. Supposedly, if you have Sanpaku eyes, meaning that there's white below your iris, it actually means that you're supposed to die young. Every time you feel very aggressive, your brain is set to kill for a few seconds. So in that 1 second, you could kill a human being. When getting laser eye surgery, you can actually smell the parts of your eyes being shaved down by the lasers. If you're a male, after you die, your loved ones can have a doctor electrocute your prostate, forcing you to ejaculate for your sperm. Female dragonflies often fake their own death to prevent rape. If you ever get burned by electricity, it will leave burn marks shaped like lightning on your skin. Many pets actually die because their owner dies unexpectedly and nobody comes in to check in on them in time.
You cannot tell me this woman is not evil. Look at the way she laughs when her friend talks about the day that she murdered her.
This weekend, a mom in Florida murdered her 10-year-old son and 19-year-old daughter after a judge ordered her to turn over custody of her son to his father. Last Thursday, Brandy Hutchins' ex-husband came down from Maine to court because his ex-wife didn't turn over custody of their son, Aiden. Brandy Hutchins was ordered by a judge to hand over custody by 6 p.m. on Friday, but instead of doing as she was ordered by the court, she ignored the Friday evening deadline, committed the murder, and then took her own life. Late Friday night, investigators learned the court order was not complied with, and detectives worked over the weekend to find the 10-year-old boy so his father could take him back to Maine. Investigators pinged cell phones, and friends pleaded for anyone who had seen Aiden to come forward. On Saturday afternoon, his father also posted online asking for help finding his son. Around 12:30 p.m. on Sunday, authorities received a call that led them to believe Brandy Hutchins was inside a mobile home with her son and 19-year-old daughter, and that's when they discovered what Brandy had done. Aiden's father posted on Sunday afternoon, "It is with a heavy heart that I am writing this to give everyone an update about my son Aiden, who was missing and taken by his mother, who decided to murder him. He will forever be in my heart and did not deserve this. The sheriff said that although there was a custody battle, there weren't any red flags that violence might occur, including no criminal history. The sheriff said there was absolutely zero evidence in the court order or testimony that there was any violence or threat of violence or a danger. But unfortunately, Hutchins did the unthinkable and murdered her son. The 19-year-old victim has not been identified, but the sheriff did say she had a different father. Rest in peace, Aiden, and the 19-year-old victim.
The Santa Suit Killer. Hi, my name is Ethan, and trigger warning, this is a dark case. Christmas Eve of 2004 in the small town of Covina, a home in a quiet neighborhood had about 25 individuals of close friends and family enjoying a Christmas party. At around 11:30 p.m. they received a knock at the door, and who was standing on the other side? Santa Claus. At least that's what the 8-year-old girl claimed whenever she answered the door. But it wasn't Saint Nick, it was Bruce Pardo, the unstable and violent ex-husband of one of the women who were at the party. He had a gun in his left hand and a flamethrower in his right, and that is where he opened fire. Due to TikTok, I can't say too much, however, he ended up unaliving 9 individuals and then burning the house down afterwards. And after the attack, instead of getting arrested, he unalived himself.
Photos taken before disaster. Richard Ramirez was 17, you in this picture. Let's enhance it with sharp AI. This woman had no idea of who her friend really was. He took over 15 lives in just a year, and was known as the Night Stalk 3R. Many said they could see pure evil in his eyes. Do you agree?
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew. Crocodiles are capable of galloping, similar to a horse. Luckily, alligators cannot. And while we're at it, tarantulas can swim. It's extremely common after you die that there will be extreme gas buildup and you will burp after death. And sometimes dead bodies can even sit up on their own. Also, if a pregnant woman dies, the gas buildup in her body can actually forcefully push a baby out. In other words, a post-mortem baby bazooka. Hearing is the last bodily function to go after one dies. So it's very possible that the last thing you ever hear is the paramedic calling off your CPR. Blue-eyed people are statistically more likely to suffer from depression and alcoholism. Sometimes an Amber Alert causes the kidnapper to panic and kill the child immediately. Every year you live through the future anniversary of your death. CNN has a pre-recorded broadcast for the end of the world. Most laugh tracks for TV shows were recorded in the early 1950s, meaning that you hear dead people laugh. If you're attacked by a bear, it won't try to kill you like other predators. Instead, it'll just start eating you. One day someone will mention you for the last time, then they'll never ever mention you again.
Police in New York believe they have finally arrested Lisk, the Long Island serial killer. This guy has been in the wind for more than a decade and has a body count of victims anywhere between 4 and 10, possibly even more. Architect Rex Heuermann was arrested on July 13th at his Midtown Manhattan office for the murders of several women who the true crime community knows as the Gilgo Four. The 59-year-old was arraigned the day after his arrest on murder charges for 3 out of the 4 victims, and he pleaded not guilty. But he is still being investigated by law enforcement for the killings of several other women. According to his defense attorney, Rex cried to him and said that he didn't do it, but prosecutors seem to have a significant amount of evidence. The DA's office claims that Heuermann's wife's DNA, yes, he was married, was found on 3 of the victims, and that one of Heuermann's hairs was found on a single victim. Additionally, calls that were made to one of the victim's sisters were traced back to Heuermann's office, and they were made from a burner phone that was traced to his Tinder profile. There is a ton of information coming out about Lisk, so check dailymail.com for updates.
A Pennsylvania man has been charged with using a homemade gun to fatally shoot a woman he had a relationship with. At 1 a.m. on September the 13th, 2016, police received a 911 call about a shooting. They rushed to Pinecrest Lane in Lower Macungie. When they got to the scene, they found 46-year-old Stephanie Roof lying on the floor in the driveway. Stephanie's boyfriend had discovered her and called police. He'd been desperately trying to perform CPR on her while calling for help. Her 2 youngest daughters were also home at the time. Stephanie was taken to a local hospital, but tragically was pronounced dead an hour later.
The autopsy found that she died from a gunshot wound to the chest. Police interviewed anyone around the area at the time of the murder, including neighbour Joseph Rasler. He initially claimed not to know Stephanie very well. However, he would later go on to admit that the pair actually did have an intimate relationship. When police searched his house, they found a metal projectile-like object. The item appeared to be homemade. A search of his devices also revealed that he'd searched online for high-pressure air pump gun and most powerful air rifle. In the months leading up to Stephanie's death, Joseph had purchased high-pressure air tanks and other equipment. When Stephanie had broken up with Joseph back in 2015, he was incredibly angry. Stephanie's eldest daughter, Trisha, had told police that Joseph had refused to accept the breakup and had become obsessed with her. It's believed that the case will be going to trial in the coming months.
Today, Michael Turney was officially acquitted of all murder charges related to the 2001 disappearance and presumed death of Alyssa Turney. If you are in the true crime community at all, you probably know Sarah Turney, who has worked for years to get justice for her sister Alyssa. Finally, this year, Alyssa's stepfather, Michael Turney, was on trial for her murder. The trial has been ongoing, but today he was acquitted. This morning, the defense asked the judge to issue an acquittal based on what they're calling a lack of evidence. And the judge apparently agreed because they threw out the case and ruled for a motion of acquittal. This is such a heartbreaking turn of events in this case, and I just know how hard Sarah has worked to get to this point and fought for justice for her sister, and this is what happens. Alyssa deserves so much better. Please join me in sending love and support to Sarah. Sarah, we are behind you, we are here to support you, and we are sending you so much love.
The 30-year search for Nikki Allan's killer has finally come to an end. Nikki Allan was just 7 years old when she was lured into a derelict building and brutally unalived. The search for the missing girl lasted about 12 hours before they found her, but the hunt for her killer lasted 3 decades. Nikki was described as a bright and sparky child who was always a mummy's girl and had a beautiful smile. She was also seen as quite a clingy child to anyone that she knows, and she wouldn't trust strangers easily, so the person that took her had to be someone that she knew. Nikki went missing on a cold October night in 1992, and the news of her disappearance travelled so fast. Dozens of friends, families, neighbours were all looking around and searching for Nikki in the area of Hendon on the south bank of River Ware. It ended in horror and heartbreak as the morning after, a teenage boy had discovered Nikki's unalive body in a derelict building. On the day of Nikki's disappearance, Sharon, her mother, was doing some washing in their flat, and the youngest of the siblings was sleeping, and Stacey and Nikki were watching television. The noise of the washing machine, however, was giving Sharon a little bit of a headache, and luckily enough, her parents lived in the same flat building as them, so she took Nikki and they both went upstairs to Sharon's mother and father's flat so that she could get some painkillers. When they got to the flat, Sharon's mother was actually vacuuming, and Nikki didn't like the sounds of that. It was giving her a little bit of a headache, so she decided to go back down to their flat. This is the last time that Sharon, Nikki's mother, saw Nikki alive. As soon as Nikki's body was found, the police honed in on a local man called George Herron. He was actually 24 years old, and he was questioned for about 3 days. But because he was under interrogation, he actually gave a false confession. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to do a part 2.
Yo, what's up? This is the case of Nathaniel Barjona, the man who supposedly ate all of his evidence. Nathaniel Barjona was a 51-year-old man and convicted felon from Worcester, Massachusetts. He had actually been sentenced to 130 years in prison for allegedly kidnapping and raping multiple young children throughout his life. It all started when he was a young boy and he lured another girl into his house claiming that he had a Ouija board that could tell the future, and when she was lured in, he would proceed to sexually assault her until her screams were loud enough to where Nathaniel Barr's mother actually came in and saved the little girl. Moving on into his later years, Barjona actually pleaded guilty in 1974 to impersonating a police officer and luring an 8-year-old boy into his car, where he would move on to sexually assault and strangle the young boy until an outsider who witnessed the whole thing actually came to the little boy's rescue, and Nathaniel Barjona was actually sentenced to a year probation. But this didn't stop Nathaniel Barjona, because a few years after his probation, he actually kidnapped and attempted to murder 2 young boys, one in which escaped from his van and actually found help. This resulted in 18 to 20 years of prison sentencing for Nathaniel Barjona. And while he was in prison, he actually discussed with a psychiatrist all of the fantasies that he had about cannibalizing children and killing and eating them and whatever else. And he was actually released from prison because he wasn't seen as a threat to the public. And this is what led to the death and kidnapping of 10-year-old Zachary Ramsey. It had been clear that Zachary Ramsey had passed away about a year later, but Nathaniel Barjona told everybody that they would not find his remains because he was scattered all over the place after Nathaniel Barjona had dismembered him and actually put him through the meat grinder that he owned at his house. Found in his home was the bones of multiple different humans, a list of kids' names with Zachary on it and the word died next to it, and also an extensive recipe on how to cook young boys. But you see, that's not even the craziest part. Along with human hair being found in his meat grinder, his neighbors actually remember him bringing over some strange meat to their house for them years before he was a convicted killer and cannibal. Guys, this only leads us to believe one thing, that he was killing these young boys and not only eating them himself, but feeding them to his neighbors.
It was a night out for 3 young girls: Sophie Russon, age 20, Eve Smith, age 21, and Darcy Ross, age 21. Now, we know that they started their night on Friday night at the Muffler Social Club before travelling to Porthcawl, and then they headed off in a VW Tiguan with 2 men to Cardiff, which is where they were last seen. Now, those 2 men were Raphael Gian, 24, and Shane Loughlin, 32. Now, after their families didn't hear from them at all over the weekend, it set about frantic worry, of course. All 5 were reported missing. Eve's sister was putting frantic updates out on Facebook throughout the weekend, asking for anyone for any help to help find her sister. And Sophie's mom even did an interview with one of the papers, saying that she felt like she was having to take matters into her own hands and go out looking for them. Now, in the early hours of this morning, just after midnight, police located that car, and in their latest statement they say along the lines: following inquiries to locate the 5 missing people, we found a car located in the St Mellons area of Cardiff. They believe it came off on the A48. 3 people were deceased. 2 people are now in hospital. Now, we're not sure which of those have survived and are recovering in hospital, but as you say, just a terribly, terribly sad ending to an absolutely awful, worrying weekend.
You know, like the first time I did it, I couldn't really believe I did it. They've tried to portray me like I was some kind of a creature, right? I was just like everybody else out there. Probably 99.9% of the time, I'm as normal as he is or anybody else is. But there's that 1% of the time or whatever that there's some kind of a problem there.
He was a monster. He is still a monster until the day he takes his last breath.
It was pretty easy to tell from the very minute I grabbed McVeigh that she wasn't like the others.
Bobby DeLon, thank you. Thank you for choosing me instead of another 17-year-old little girl.
And that's probably why she's still alive, walking and talking today.
I had made my mind up that night when I came home from work that I was going to end my life. I even sat down and wrote my suicide note out. I left around 2 a.m. when I got off my shift. I remember being happy. I was happy. I know when I go home, I'm going to end my life. I was happy. I'm going to be free.
While she bikes through the dark, empty streets, she notices a red car parked in front of a church.
I don't know why it seemed odd to me. And I just kind of shrugged it off. It's like, I'll be okay.
She ignores her instinct, but the driver of the car is hiding behind a parked van.
Next thing I was just yanked off my bicycle. horrifically, just so forceful. Knocked the breath out of me. I felt the barrel of a gun to my left temple. I remember him putting a blindfold on my face. I was ordered to take all my clothes off. He ties me up, ligatures on my wrists, ankles. Throws me in the car, yells at me to keep my eyes shut, and that if I showed him a good time, he was not going to kill me. My grandmother's boyfriend used to put a gun to my head every time he molested me for 3 years. It was nothing new to me.
Lisa does everything the man says, as she is threatened with a gun. Then the man starts the car and takes her away. Lisa sitting blindfolded in the passenger seat, her clothes bundled at her feet.
I had no clue where we were going. This is going to be it. This is going to be it. Rape and death. Next thing, to my surprise, my abductor makes me get dressed.
The man removes her bindings from her wrists and her ankles, but keeps her blindfolded. Lisa is taken out of the car and into an apartment building. Once inside, she's thrown onto a bed.
He raped me any way you can imagine. He raped me. Very painful. Very painful.